So, let's start by asking ourselves, why did the Roman Empire collapse in the first place? Okay, it was supplanted by something we call the Middle Ages today. Okay, most theories why that happens, of course, have this in common. It all comes down to the Migration Age. Yeah, the Migration Age, a time when Germanic tribes from the north of Europe pressed into the Roman Empire, started in the 2nd century and went on for some like 400 or 500 years even. Yeah? So Germanic tribes from the north of Europe pressing into the Roman Empire and eventually sacking Rome, as the Goths did. Yeah? So the names of these tribes are household names. The Vandals gave their name to vandalism. The Franks, who gave their name to a country called France today. You got the Angles and the Saxons. They will occupy us, of course, later on. And a few others. The question is, why did they do that? The Germanic tribes. Did they just seek greener pastures in the Roman Empire? There's one theory, which I like in particular, that it all comes down to the ones you see here, one of their representatives, the Huns, a tribe from Central Asia who, in a way, fell into Germanic territory, if you like, and the Germans, or the Germanic tribes, could only move further west into the Roman Empire. And that is that the Huns are originally responsible for all these movements because they were very successful warriors, because they were the only ones, very good riders, and the only ones who could shoot from arrows from horseback, because they had invented the stirrup. They could lift themselves up and shoot arrows. The Romans and the Germans can do that. Okay, this is probably a reason. So the Germanic tribes fleeing from the Huns, or they just could go into the Roman Empire. There's some truth in that. The other one is that the Germans were organized as whole people, king in front, and then aristocracy and the warriors, and a whole people of thousands of warriors, at least hundreds. And if they press into what was then Gaul, which was more or less run by clans of a few hundred people, they would have stood a better chance. And they did. Does it come down to that? We don't know. So actually it happened, and that's all we can say, that this Migration Age put an end to the dominance of Rome. Okay. Right. So what happened is, first of all, that the economic and the cultural centers moved from the Mediterranean after the Migration Age, and when the medieval times started. The cultural centers and the economic centers moved from the Mediterranean to the north of Europe. Okay, to cities like Paris and Aix, Aachen in German, and not Rome and Athens anymore. So this is one thing about the Middle Ages. So a shift from the Mediterranean to the north of Europe. What else? The pagan world picture was supplanted by Christian world picture. I mean, this is certainly true. And this is why a big part of ancient science and ancient philosophy and so on was lost. And only the Renaissance was able to excavate it again, if you like. Well, probably 1,000 years later. So, yes, this certainly happened. And the only institution which survived the decline of the Roman Empire was the Christian Church, which had become the state religion, Christianity of the Roman Empire in the 4th century. So, the church survived, and the Latin language did, which was still the language of learning in monasteries and cloisters, the only centers of learning in medieval times. If you have places of learning, it's the monasteries and the cloisters. So Latin, yes, Latin survived, if only in a more or less watered down fashion. Okay, so what about England in the early Middle Ages? Speaking of a time between 500 and 1100, time between the Anglo-Saxon conquest and the Norman conquest. We call those days Anglo-Saxon times, all right. Old English times, if you refer to the language spoken then, or the Dark Ages, which is not politically correct anymore, but I like the Dark Ages insofar as that they are, in a way, dark for us, as not much writing has survived. Well, some of it has, and we are lucky that it did, but much of those times is dark for us. Okay, very difficult to say, for example, how the peasantry was off in those days, which is the largest percentage of the population, because all the writings we have is aristocratic. Okay, anyway, call them what you will, early Middle Ages, Old English times, Anglo-Saxon times, whatever. And this brings us back to the migration age, okay, and to that part here. If you look up, this is the British Isles, of course, and you see here the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes who invaded, occupied what is today England, more or less. So Germanic tribes from the north of Europe at the end, more or less, of the migration age. Okay, and in order to reconstruct what happened in those days, 5th century, all right, when Britain became Anglo-Saxon, if you like, I would like to turn to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, a piece of historical writing which has survived from Old English times in Old English, and from which we glean most of the information we have about the Dark Ages. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, it's a sort of historical writing, and insofar as that it is structured according to years and times. So in the year so-and-so this happened. Today we would structure his history according to events. I don't know, the Battle of Hastings, the French Revolution, the Second World War, something like this, and not date and what happened. But a chronicle does that, and the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles is exactly that. It is written in Old English, which is a synthetic language, more reminiscent of modern German than of modern English. Why? Because it's very inflecting, insofar as the grammar is contained in the word endings. Today it's in the syntax. You will see that later on. But Old English has a free syntax, and I just want to demonstrate that. Here is a line which is completely silly, but here you go. Leo kisseth Gumman, which means the lion kisseth the man. And you see Gumman, this is an accusative, and which means you know who is kissing whom because of the endings, the N here. And therefore you can switch it around. You can say Gumman kisseth Leo, Gumman Leo kisseth. It all means the same thing. You know the lion is kissing the man. And if you just switch the N around, the endings, it's the other way around. Yeah, Guma kisseth Leon, then it is the man who kisses the lion with an N. Okay, and then you have a free syntax and so on. So this is a so-called synthetic language. Synthetic meaning you have a synthesis of morphemes, yeah, bound and free morphemes, which are synthesized into a certain word, and these bound morphemes, they have a certain grammatical function. Okay. A few remarks if we turn to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle on Anglo-Saxon spelling. So you see the first one, which looks a bit like the A. Well, it is, in a way, the A of the IPA, phonetic alphabet. It's a ligature, so it's an A and an E together, which is an open vowel, meaning something like A, in German, usually denoted with two dots. Then you have those two runes, which represent the interdental fricative in its voiced and voiceless variety. So either th or the. They don't distinguish. Both mean the same thing. One of them you still know from the phonetic alphabet. They are two runes which survived. Then you have the H. When it is in a word, usually it is the ich or ach, a fricative which has died out in modern English. Germans don't have a problem with that. The Brits do. And ich, ach. So that you have the words. There's one word, jesochte, for example, which you have to pronounce like this. Jesochte. Jesochte. A Y represents a rounded front vowel, Ü, rounded Ü, which doesn't exist in English anymore. Yes, Ü, Ü, Ü. Just for those, for native speakers of English, just pronounce an E and round your lips. EU, EU, EU. What's so difficult about that? I don't know. Well, but I'm a German, so yes, I should know. Anyway, and this sort of seven thingy here, seven, is just short for and because if you have a chronicle, this happened, and that happened, and that happened. It's a very frequent symbol here. This. So these are the conventions, and this is what you have to know about the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. It's nothing much. The H and the Y. Okay, and this is the first entry, and I would like to turn to this in the next installment, okay? The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, and what it tells us about the end of, the beginning and the end of ancient times in Britain, okay? Let's turn to that. Okay, see you in the next one.